The leather chair in the Wilson and Barnes law office felt colder than usual as I watched my three children's faces light up during the reading of their mother's will. After Victoria's unexpected passing, our kids, Michael, 38, Diana, 35, and Thomas, 32, couldn't wait to divide their inheritance. And so, the total assets of Victoria Montgomery's estate, including Montgomery Global Solutions and all subsidiary companies, valued at approximately $72 million, will be divided equally among her three children. I'm Robert Montgomery, 63 years old, and for 35 years, I worked alongside my wife Victoria, building Montgomery Global Solutions from the ground up. While she was the CEO and face of the company, I quietly managed our client relationships and operations. My name wasn't on the building, but my fingerprints were on every major contract we'd ever secured. There's just one small detail, Jonathan Wilson, our family attorney, said as he adjusted his glasses. The transfer of assets requires maintaining current client relationships and profit margins for a minimum of 1 year. Not an issue, Michael declared, straightening his Italian silk tie. Time to bring this company into the modern era. No offense, Dad, but your handshake deals and long lunches are prehistoric. Diana nodded in agreement. We need automation, digital transformation. The personal touch is so last century. Thomas, the youngest, barely looked up from his phone. Already got consultants lined up, going to streamline everything. I remained silent, thinking about the countless evenings Victoria and I had spent discussing our children's readiness for leadership. She knew, as I did, that they saw the money, but not the foundation it was built on. Dad, Diana turned to me with a practiced smile. You should take that Mediterranean cruise you and Mom always talked about. Enjoy your golden years. Your mother never wanted to take a cruise, I said quietly. She got seasick on our honeymoon ferry ride. Michael waved dismissively. Whatever. Point is, it's time for the next generation to take over. We've got MBAs, modern business training. We know how things work in today's world. Jonathan cleared his throat. There's one more item. A letter from Victoria, to be read after the will. I noticed my children's impatience as Jonathan broke the seal. Victoria had always been strategic, even in death. My dearest children, Jonathan read, by now you're probably planning all the changes you'll make to modernize the company. Before you do, remember what I always told you. In our business, contracts don't build relationships. Relationships build contracts. Watch carefully who really keeps this empire running. You might be surprised. All my love, Mom. Classic Mom. Diana laughed. Always with the cryptic business wisdom. Well, I think we're done here. Dad, HR will sort out your retirement package. Very generous, of course. I stood slowly, gathering my coat. 35 years of relationships, trust, and unwritten agreements weighed heavily on my shoulders. Just one thing, I said. Who's handling the Anderson account review next week? Michael frowned. What review? There's nothing in the system about Anderson Global. Because James Anderson only discusses contract renewals over bourbon at the Capitol Grill. Has for 20 years. That's ridiculous, Thomas scoffed. Everything needs to be documented, systematized. We're implementing full digital transformation. I headed for the door. Good luck explaining that to James. He still uses a flip phone and thinks email is too impersonal. Outside Washington, D.C.'s autumn chill matched the atmosphere I'd left behind. My phone buzzed. A text from James Anderson himself. Heard about Victoria. My deepest condolences. She was one hell of a woman. Dinner tonight. Need to discuss some concerns about the future. I didn't respond immediately. Let my children discover how business really worked at our level. At home, our housekeeper, Maria, had prepared my favorite comfort food. Victoria's recipe for beef bourguignon. She'd been with us for 25 years, knew our family's rhythms better than anyone. Mrs. Victoria always said this would happen, she said softly, placing the steaming bowl before me. That the children needed to learn what really makes the business work. I took a bite, remembering countless dinners with Victoria, planning, strategizing, building our empire one relationship at a time. My phone buzzed again. Sarah Thompson, CEO of Global Innovations. Bob, please tell me you're still handling our defense contracts. Board meeting Monday, and we need your security clearance and connections. I set the phone aside. My children would soon learn that in the world of government contracting and international business, personal relationships and trust weren't just important, they were everything. The next morning, my inbox overflowed. Word travels fast in our circles. Major clients seeking assurance about their projects. Government contacts wanting confirmation of ongoing arrangements. Even competitors reaching out, sensing opportunity in the impending chaos. At 9 a.m., Michael called. Dad, he tried to sound casual. Anderson Global is insisting on meeting with you about some contract review. Told them I'm in charge now, but they're being difficult. James can be like that. I replied mildly. Very particular about who he trusts with 9-figure defense contracts. Look, just send me the files and brief me. I'll handle it. There are no files, Michael. James and I work things out over dinner and bourbon. Been doing it that way since before you were born. That's insane. Everything needs proper documentation, digital trails. We're not running some mom and pop shop. Try telling that to James. He still remembers when I helped get his son into West Point. Or when I stood by him during that Senate investigation in 08. Michael's frustration crackled through the phone. Fine. Come in tomorrow. Brief me properly. But after that, you're done. We're modernizing everything. I agreed, knowing what would happen next. In our world, trust and relationships weren't just assets. They were the only assets that really mattered. The next day, I walked into my old office, Michael's office now. The familiar space had been stripped of decades of memories. My collection of military challenge coins and diplomatic gifts, each representing relationships built over years, had been replaced by modern art and tech gadgets. Okay, Michael said, not looking up from his jewel monitors, tell me about this Anderson review so I can handle it. It's not that simple, I began. Of course it is. It's just business. Numbers, projections, compliance. I didn't spend 2 years at Harvard Business School to be mystified by a government contract. I studied my eldest son, seeing both his intelligence and his blindness, so sure of his modern business education that he couldn't see the ancient truths it was built on. James Anderson, I said slowly, doesn't care about your Harvard degree. He cares that I helped him navigate that Senate investigation. That I know which congressman to call when projects need special attention. That I've spent Christmas Eve with his family for 15 years. That's not how modern business works, Michael protested. We need transparency, documentation, clear processes. Really? Tell that to Senator Williams, who only approves our contracts because I helped his daughter during that PR crisis last year. Or General Matthews, who trusts us because I was his father's XO in Desert Storm. Michael's phone buzzed. His face tightened as he read the message. Anderson just canceled next week's review, he said. Says he'll only deal with you, or he's taking his business to Raytheon. I stood up. Sounds like you have a decision to make. The Capitol Grille's private dining room hadn't changed in 20 years. Same rich mahogany panels, same discreet staff, same unspoken understanding that what happened here stayed here. James Anderson was already nursing his usual bourbon when Michael and I arrived. He stood, embracing me warmly before fixing my son with a calculating stare. So this is the new CEO, he said, making no effort to hide his skepticism. The one who wants to digitize everything. Michael extended his hand. Mr. Anderson, I've analyzed our historical data and prepared some innovative proposals for optimizing our partnership. Son, James cut him off. I don't need proposals. I need someone I trust to handle $3 billion in classified defense contracts. Your father has been that person for decades. We sat down, the waiter automatically bringing James his second bourbon and me my usual sparkling water. Michael looked lost without his iPad or presentation slides. The new submarine guidance systems, James continued, ignoring Michael completely, need some special handling with the Appropriations Committee. Bob, have you spoken with Senator Williams? Had dinner with him Saturday, I replied. His daughter's wedding went well. He's concerned about the cost overruns, but I assured him we'd manage the optics carefully. Michael interrupted, We should schedule a formal meeting with the committee, present our compliance reports. James actually laughed. You really don't get it, do you? Senator Williams doesn't want meetings. He wants to know his old friend, Bob Montgomery, will keep his name out of the papers when the budget questions start. That's how things work in this town. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah Thompson. Emergency board meeting in an hour. Pentagon pushing back on the new contract terms. Need your magic touch. I showed the message to James, who nodded knowingly. Thompson always gets nervous when the DoD flexes. Remember that time in 2019 when they almost pulled her security clearance? Took 2 months of careful conversations to sort that out, I recalled. General Matthews still thanks me for finding that veterans program for his nephew. Michael looked between us, finally beginning to understand what he dismissed as old-school networking. Dad, he said quietly, perhaps we should discuss a transition strategy. No need. I stood up. You're in charge now. I'm sure Harvard Business School prepared you for managing relationships with people who've trusted me with national security matters for 30 years. James raised his glass in a mock toast. Good luck, kid. You'll need it when the Senate Oversight Committee starts asking questions. Back in the car, Michael was uncharacteristically silent. How do you keep track of all these connections? He finally asked. I paid attention, I said simply. These aren't just business contacts, Michael. They're people who've shared their problems, their fears, their secrets with me over decades. But there must be records, documentation. The only documentation that matters is trust. Senator Williams trusts me because I was there when his daughter hit rock bottom. Sarah Thompson stays with us because I helped her navigate the Old Boys Club of defense contracting. James Anderson values our friendship more than our profit margins. Michael's phone buzzed. His expression darkened as he read the message. Global Innovations is reviewing their strategic partnerships given recent management changes, he said quietly. General Matthews, I nodded. He's probably worried about the new missile defense project. We've been quietly positioning that for months. We have a new contract with the Pentagon. There's nothing in the system. Because it's still at the handshake stage. Matthews doesn't want any paper trail until the appropriations are secure. We work out the details over scotch at his lake house. This is impossible, Michael muttered. How can I run a company where all the major deals happen over drinks and private dinners? That's exactly what your mother wondered 30 years ago, I said. Why do you think she kept me in the background? We pulled up to the office just as my phone rang. Sarah Thompson. Bob, she said without preamble, please tell me you're still handling our Pentagon relationships. Actually, Sarah, Michael is in charge now. He has some excellent ideas about modernizing our processes. No, she cut in. The board is clear. Either you stay involved, or we're exploring other options. I put the phone on speaker so Michael could hear. Sarah, you know I'm retired now. Retired, she laughed. Bob, you have security clearances and relationships it takes decades to build. My board trusts you, not some corporate entity. Michael was furiously typing on his phone, probably calculating how much revenue was at risk. I'll need to discuss this with Michael, I said. He's the CEO now. Discuss quickly, Sarah replied. DoD meeting in 2 hours. We need an answer. After hanging up, Michael looked at me with new understanding. How much? He asked. How much business depends on personal relationships like this? Conservatively, 90% of our revenue comes from people who work with us because they trust me personally. He slumped in his seat. Mom knew this would happen, didn't she? That's why she wrote that letter. Your mother was brilliant at many things, but understanding people was her real genius. She knew the company's value wasn't in its systems or processes, but in its relationships. So what do I do? Watch our inheritance evaporate because I was too arrogant to see what was right in front of me. I thought about Victoria, about our late-night conversations on the children's future, about the hard lessons that shape real leaders. You have 2 choices, I said. Keep trying to digitize relationships that took decades to build. Or learn how business really works at this level. Not from spreadsheets or algorithms, but from experience. 1 month into what Michael now called his real business education, we sat in my home study, surrounded by handwritten notes and photographs spanning 3 decades of relationships. Let me get this straight, he said, massaging his temples. General Matthews' son is deploying next month, Senator Williams' daughter is expecting her first child, and James Anderson's grandson just got accepted to West Point. And Sarah Thompson's husband is receiving the Distinguished Service Medal next week, I added. We need to be at the ceremony. 3rd row, not too conspicuous, but present. How is any of this connected to running a defense contracting company? I poured us both a scotch, James Anderson's preferred brand, and settled into my leather chair. Tell me, Michael, why does Global Innovations pay us $500 million annually? Because we provide superior defense technology solutions. No, I interrupted. They pay us because when Sarah Thompson was the only woman in a room full of generals 15 years ago, I made sure she was heard. Because when her company nearly lost its security clearance in 2019, I called in favors from 3 senators. The contracts aren't for our technology, they are for our influence. His phone buzzed. Another text about a client reconsidering their position. We've lost 4 major contracts this month, he said quietly, even with you helping me navigate these relationships. Because they're watching, I explained, testing whether you understand the real currency in this business. My secure line rang, the one only a handful of people had access to. Bob. General Matthews' voice was tense. The Appropriations Committee is asking questions about the missile defense project. Could sink the whole program. I put the call on speaker for Michael's benefit. Senator Williams' daughter is having complications with her pregnancy, I said. He's distracted, looking for reasons to delay votes. How do you know these things? Had coffee with his wife yesterday. She's worried about him bringing stress home. Michael watched in fascination as I handled the situation. Call Congressman Parker, I told the general. Tell him we can fast-track that veterans program in his district. I'll handle Williams. After hanging up, I turned to Michael. Senator Williams doesn't care about budget overruns. He's using his committee position to manage personal stress. That's how Washington really works. But he hesitated. Politics? Welcome to the real world of defense contracting. We're helping veterans get care while ensuring critical defense programs move forward. Everyone wins. My phone buzzed. A text from Senator Williams himself. Bob, Nancy mentioned you stopped by. Perhaps we could discuss the appropriations over dinner. Sarah would appreciate your perspective on her situation. I showed Michael a message. See, problem solving isn't always about data and presentations. He was quiet for a moment, processing everything. Is this why Mom kept you out of the spotlight? to handle things that couldn't be put in official records. Your mother understood that some business happens in the shadows between influence and authority. She was the public face. I was the quiet fixer. And now you need to decide what kind of leader you want to be. One who understands these nuances, or one who tries to force everything into digital systems. Michael's phone rang. Sarah Thompson. "The Pentagon meeting is tomorrow," she said when he answered. "They want to know if Bob is still involved." I gestured for him to handle it. "Sarah," he started, then caught himself. "The ceremony next week. Dad and I would be honored to attend. And congratulations to David on the medal. Well deserved after his service in Afghanistan." There was a pause on the line. "You're learning, Michael." "Good. Tell Bob I'll see him at the usual place before the ceremony." After she hung up, Michael looked at me thoughtfully. That's the first call in weeks that didn't end with a threat to terminate contracts. Because you showed you cared about her husband's achievement, not just her company's business. Just then, my secure email pinged. A message from James Anderson marked urgent. "DoD considering shifting contracts to Raytheon," I read aloud. "Internal meeting tonight to discuss reallocation of funds." Michael started to panic. "That's $2 billion in contracts. We need to prepare a response, show them our technical capabilities." "No," I said, reaching for my phone. "We need to remind General Matthews about that time I helped his brother during the VA crisis. Pentagon budgets are influenced by relationships, not PowerPoints." He watched as I had a brief conversation with the general, mostly about family and old times in the service. An hour later, James Anderson called. "DoD meeting canceled," he said simply. "Matthews insisted on maintaining strategic continuity. You're still the best in the game, Bob." "Just looking out for old friends," I replied. "By the way, Michael will be at West Point next week for your grandson's orientation. Wants to continue the family tradition of supporting the academy." After hanging up, I turned to my son. "Pack your service dress. You're going to learn how the military-industrial complex really operates." "But the board meeting." "Cancel it. This is more important. You need to understand that in our world, influence flows through relationships, not organizational charts." Michael was quiet for a long moment, looking at the photographs on my wall. Decades of ceremonies, private meetings, and handshakes that had built our empire. "Dad," he said finally, "why didn't you and Mom ever put me through this training before?" I thought about Victoria, about our discussions of legacy and leadership. Because sometimes lessons have to be learned through failure first. Your mother understood that. She knew you'd have to lose something to understand its value. And now you need to decide what kind of company you want to run. One built on relationships and influence, or one that just processes contracts. His phone buzzed again. Senator Williams confirming dinner next week. "I think," Michael said slowly, "I need to learn a lot more about building influence." I smiled, remembering when Victoria had come to the same realization decades ago. "Don't forget about General Matthews' son's deployment," I said. "And send a private note to Sarah Thompson before the ceremony. These details matter." "Dad," he hesitated, "thank you for not letting us destroy what you and Mom built. Thank your mother. She knew this would happen. Knew you all needed to learn these lessons the hard way." Michael looked at Victoria's picture on my desk, finally understanding the real inheritance she'd left behind. "How much longer do I need to learn?" he asked. "In this business," I said, "you never stop learning, never stop building relationships. That's what makes it valuable." He nodded, beginning to understand that $72 million wasn't just money. It was a web of influence that had taken decades to weave. 6 months later, I sat in the back of a Pentagon briefing room, watching Michael navigate a critical defense contract negotiation. The transformation was remarkable. Before we discussed the new missile guidance systems, he began, General Matthews, I heard your son returned safely from deployment. And Sarah, David's medal ceremony was inspiring, a true testament to his service. The room of military brass and defense contractors nodded appreciatively. They had witnessed Michael's evolution from a data-driven MBA graduate to someone who understood the delicate dance of power, influence, and relationships. Senator Williams, Michael continued smoothly, I trust Sarah is doing well with the new baby. My father mentioned the christening is next month. I caught James Anderson hiding a smile. He had been the harshest critic of Michael's initial approach, but even he had come around after watching my son learn the unwritten rules of our world. The meeting proceeded flawlessly, with Michael demonstrating the careful balance between technical expertise and personal connection that had taken me decades to master. He had learned the language of influence well. After the room cleared, he found me in the hallway. How did I do? He asked, sounding momentarily like the young boy who used to watch me leave for mysterious dinner meetings. You remembered Congressman Parker's Veterans Program without being obvious about it. Well done. He smiled, loosening his tie. 6 months ago, I thought relationships were just an old-school waste of time. Now I realize they're the only real currency in this business. My phone buzzed. A message from Victoria's attorney. It's time, I said, showing Michael a message. In the lawyer's office, Jonathan Wilson opened a sealed envelope. Victoria's final instruction, to be read exactly 6 months after the initial will. My dearest children, Jonathan Reed, if you're hearing this, it means 2 things. First, you tried to modernize everything and probably tried to push your father aside. Second, you've spent 6 months learning why that was a foolish mistake. Michael laughed softly, shaking his head at his mother's foresight. The $72 million was never the real inheritance, Jonathan continued. The real value lies in the relationships your father built, the trust he earned, the influence he cultivated. Learn from him, respect what he built, and you'll understand why I structured things this way. There was more. A second set of documents transferring 40% of the company shares to me. Can't have you retiring just yet, darling, Victoria's letter concluded. Some lessons take more than 6 months to teach. Michael stared at the documents, then at me. You knew about this. Your mother and I planned it years ago. You needed to fail first to learn properly. So now we're partners. Now you're ready to be partners, I corrected. 6 months ago, you wouldn't have understood the difference. Later that evening, over dinner at the Capitol Grill, Michael raised his glass. To Mom, he said, for teaching me the hardest lesson of my life. And to you, Dad, for showing me what real power looks like. My phone buzzed one final time that evening. A group message from our key contacts. Congratulations on the partnership announcement. The old guard and the new working together. Just as it should be. Dinner next week. The usual place. James, Sarah, General Matthews, and Senator Williams. Michael read the message and smiled. 6 months ago, I wouldn't have understood why this message matters more than any contract. And now? Now I understand that $72 million bought us assets, but relationships built our real wealth. Sometimes the best lessons in power come from learning where real influence lies, not in boardrooms or spreadsheets, but in the quiet conversations and trusted relationships built over decades. The old guard hadn't stepped aside after all. He had just ensured his legacy would continue through evolution, not revolution.